The morning sun cast long shadows across the gardens of Kensington Palace as Catherine walked slowly through the rose garden she had loved so dearly. Her fingers traced the petals of the white roses that had bloomed just weeks before, their beauty now seeming bittersweet. William stood at the window of their private study, watching his wife with a heavy heart. He knew this moment had been coming for months, yet nothing could have prepared him for the reality of it. Catherine had been feeling unwell for several months. What started as simple fatigue had gradually become something more serious. The royal doctors had been discreet, but their concerned faces told a story that words could not capture. The diagnosis had come on a Tuesday morning in early spring, delivered in the sterile environment of a private medical facility. The words had hung in the air like a death sentence, though both William and Catherine had maintained their composure, with the grace that had defined their public lives. They had decided together that their farewell would be quiet, away from the media circus that had followed their every move for over a decade. This was to be their private moment, their chance to say goodbye on their own terms. Catherine had insisted that their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, should remember her as she was in her strongest moments, not in her final days. William had reluctantly agreed, though every fiber of his being wanted to hold on to every precious second they had left. The palace staff had been informed of Catherine's condition just days before. Many had worked with the couple for years, watching their love story unfold from young newlyweds to devoted parents. Mrs. Henderson, their longtime housekeeper, had broken down in tears when she learned the news. James, their security detail leader, had to excuse himself from the room. These were not just employees. They were family, and the thought of losing Catherine felt unbearable to everyone who knew her. Catherine had spent the previous weeks writing letters to each of their children, to be opened on their 18th birthdays. She had also written to William, though she had not yet found the courage to give it to him. The letter sat in her jewelry box, next to the sapphire engagement ring that had once belonged to Diana. She often wondered if Diana had felt this same mixture of sadness and peace when she knew her time was limited. The couple had chosen to spend these final days at Anmer Hall, their private residence in Norfolk. Away from the formalities of palace life, they could simply be William and Catherine, husband and wife, facing the most difficult challenge of their lives together. They walked the grounds hand in hand, sharing memories of happier times. They spoke of their first meeting at university, their secret romance, the overwhelming joy of their wedding day, and the indescribable happiness they felt when each of their children was born. William found himself memorizing every detail of these moments. The way Catherine's hair caught the sunlight, the sound of her gentle laughter when she remembered a funny story about Charlotte's first attempt at baking, the warmth of her hand in his as they sat by the fireplace in the evenings. He knew these memories would have to sustain him for the rest of his life, and he wanted to capture every nuance, every expression, every word. Catherine, for her part, was determined to make these days as normal as possible. She continued her morning routine of reading the newspapers, though she now skipped the sections about royal duties and future engagements. She tended to her small herb garden, teaching William which plants needed more water and which thrived in the shade. She wanted him to have these simple skills, these connections to the earth and growing things for the difficult days that lay ahead. The evenings were the hardest. As they sat together in the sitting room, the weight of unspoken words hung heavy between them. There was so much to say, yet somehow words seemed inadequate for the magnitude of what they were facing. Catherine would often rest her head on William's shoulder, and they would sit in comfortable silence, listening to the grandfather clock tick away the precious minutes they had left together. Their friends had been quietly informed, but Catherine had requested no visitors during these final days. She wanted this time to belong entirely to her and William, a sacred space where they could process their grief privately. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, who had always been intensely private people despite their public roles, needed this sanctuary to prepare for a goodbye that would change everything. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had been Catherine's physician for 3 years, but nothing in her extensive medical training had prepared her for delivering this particular diagnosis to one of the most beloved members of the royal family. She had requested a private meeting with William and Catherine on that fateful Tuesday morning, her usually steady hands trembling slightly as she reviewed the test results one final time. The appointment took place in a discreet wing of the London clinic, Far from any photographers or curious onlookers, Catherine sat quietly in the leather chair, her hands folded in her lap with the same composure she displayed during state dinners and charity galas. William stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder, both of them bracing for news they already suspected would change their lives forever. Dr. Mitchell spoke gently but clearly. The rare condition that Catherine had developed was aggressive and had already progressed beyond the point where treatment could offer any real hope. She explained the medical terms with compassion, but the message was unmistakable. Catherine had perhaps 6 months, possibly less. The doctor had seen many patients receive similar news, but watching this young mother and devoted wife process the information was particularly heartbreaking. Catherine's first question was not about treatment options or second opinions. She asked how long she could maintain her normal activities, how long she could continue being a hands-on mother to her children. Dr. Mitchell explained that Catherine might have several more weeks of relative normalcy before the symptoms would become more apparent. This window of time became precious beyond measure. William's reaction was controlled but devastating. His jaw tightened as he absorbed the information, his protective instincts warring with his helplessness. He asked about experimental treatments, clinical trials, anything that might offer hope. Dr. Mitchell had anticipated these questions and gently explained that they had already explored every possible avenue. Sometimes, she said softly, the bravest choice was to focus on quality of life rather than quantity. The drive back to Kensington Palace was silent except for the gentle hum of their security vehicle. Catherine stared out the window at the London streets, watching ordinary people going about their ordinary lives, envying them their simple certainty about tomorrow. William gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his mind racing through all the implications of what they had just learned. When they arrived home, the palace felt different somehow, as if the very walls knew that everything had changed. Their butler, Stevens, greeted them at the door with his usual warm smile, completely unaware that the couple he had served faithfully for years was carrying news that would soon shatter the carefully constructed world of the royal household. That evening, after the children had been put to bed with their usual bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, William and Catherine sat in their private sitting room and began the most difficult conversation of their marriage. They spoke in whispers as if speaking too loudly might make the reality more real. Catherine was remarkably calm, almost serene, as she began to outline what she wanted for their remaining time together. She wanted to create video messages for George, Charlotte, and Louis to watch on future birthdays and important milestones. She wanted to write in their baby books, adding memories and advice that would help them understand who their mother had been. She wanted to spend individual time with each child, creating special memories that would comfort them in the years to come. William struggled to maintain his composure as they discussed practical matters. Catherine wanted their farewell to be private, intimate, free from the media attention that had defined so much of their public life. She wanted to spend her final weeks at Anmer Hall, surrounded by the Norfolk countryside that had always brought her peace. She wanted to tend her garden, read her favorite books, and simply exist as a wife and mother rather than as a public figure. The most difficult conversation came when they discussed how and when to tell the children. Catherine felt strongly that they should wait until the symptoms became more apparent, wanting to preserve their innocence for as long as possible. William worried about the shock of a sudden revelation, but ultimately deferred to Catherine's maternal instincts. She knew their children better than anyone, and he trusted her judgment completely. As the night grew later, they found themselves holding each other with a desperation they had never felt before. Every embrace felt both precious and insufficient. William whispered promises about keeping Catherine's memory alive, about raising their children with the same values and love she had always shown them. Catherine spoke softly about her lack of regrets, about how grateful she felt for the life they had built together, even if it would be shorter than they had hoped. They made a pact that night to live every remaining day to its fullest, to find joy in small moments and to create as many beautiful memories as possible in the time they had left. It was a promise that would guide them through the difficult weeks ahead, helping them find light in even the darkest moments of their journey together. The decision to move to Anmer Hall came naturally to both William and Catherine. The Georgian country house in Norfolk had always been their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the formalities of royal life and simply be a family. The 10-bedroom residence gifted to them by Queen Elizabeth as a wedding present had witnessed some of their happiest moments: birthdays, Christmas mornings, lazy summer afternoons in the garden. The staff at Anmer Hall had been carefully selected over the years for their discretion and loyalty. Maria Santos, their housekeeper, had worked for the family since George was born. She noticed immediately that something was different when the family arrived for what was supposed to be an extended stay. Catherine moved more slowly than usual, and there was a sadness in William's eyes that hadn't been there during their last visit. The house itself seemed to embrace them with its warm, honey-colored stone walls and sprawling gardens. Catherine had always loved the morning light that streamed through the kitchen windows, and she made it a point to sit there each day with her tea, watching the birds at the feeder she had installed years earlier. These simple pleasures took on new meaning now, each moment becoming a treasure to be savored rather than rushed through. George, Charlotte, and Louis adapted quickly to the change in routine. At 9, 7, and 5 respectively, they were young enough to see the move as an adventure rather than question the sudden departure from their London schedules. Catherine threw herself into being present for every moment with them, helping with homework at the kitchen table, reading extra bedtime stories, and taking long walks through the estate's woodlands. William watched his wife with a mixture of admiration and heartbreak. Even facing her own mortality, Catherine's primary concern remained their children's happiness and security. She organized treasure hunts around the property, taught Charlotte how to braid friendship bracelets, and spent hours helping Louis build elaborate block towers. Her energy seemed to ebb and flow like tides, but during the good moments, she burned brightly with maternal love. The couple established new routines that honored both Catherine's declining energy and their desire to make the most of their time together. Early mornings became sacred, spent walking slowly through the gardens before the children woke up. They would discuss memories from their university days, laugh about their early dating mishaps, and share hopes for how their children would remember these days. Catherine had always been an avid photographer, and now she approached this hobby with renewed purpose. She documented everything: William making pancakes on Sunday morning, the children playing in the autumn leaves, quiet moments in the library where they read together in comfortable silence. She wanted to create a visual legacy that would help her family remember not just that she had been there, but how she had loved them. The hardest moments came when Catherine's symptoms would suddenly worsen. Sometimes she would need to excuse herself from family activities, leaving William to explain her absence with creative stories about headaches or tiredness. He became masterful at distraction, suggesting impromptu games or activities that would redirect the children's attention. Charlotte, perceptive as always, sometimes asked pointed questions, but William managed to reassure her without revealing the full truth. Dr. Mitchell made discreet house calls, arriving in unmarked vehicles to check on Catherine's condition and adjust her medication as needed. These visits were scheduled during school hours when the children were with their tutor, Miss Rebecca Thompson, who had been with the family for 2 years and could be trusted to maintain their routine. Without asking uncomfortable questions, Catherine began writing in earnest during the quiet afternoon hours when the children were occupied with lessons or play. She filled notebook after notebook with letters, stories, and advice meant for future milestones in their lives. She wrote about the importance of kindness, the value of hard work, and the strength that comes from facing difficult times with grace. Each letter was a piece of her heart, carefully crafted to provide comfort and guidance long after she would no longer be there to offer it in person. William found solace in practical preparations. He learned to cook Catherine's favorite recipes, memorizing the exact way she seasoned the roast chicken that the children loved. He studied her gardening techniques, understanding which plants needed protection during Norfolk's harsh winters. He wanted to maintain the small traditions that made their house a home, ensuring that some essence of Catherine's nurturing presence would continue even in her absence. The evenings were spent in the sitting room with its crackling fireplace, where Catherine would often fall asleep in William's arms while they watched old movies or simply talked. He would carry her upstairs, tucking her into bed with the same tender care she had always shown their children. These quiet acts of love became his way of expressing feelings too deep for words, his promise that she would never face this journey alone. The October afternoon when Catherine finally gathered the courage to tell the children about her condition was crisp and golden, with autumn leaves swirling around the windows of the library at Anmer Hall. She had chosen this room carefully. It was where they often had their most important family conversations, surrounded by books and the comfortable leather chairs that had hosted countless bedtime stories. Catherine had spent weeks planning exactly what to say. She had consulted child psychologists, read books about helping children cope with loss, and practiced the words in front of her mirror until they felt natural. But sitting there with George, Charlotte, and Louis arranged around her, their innocent faces turned up expectantly, she realized that no amount of preparation could make this moment easier. William sat beside her, ready to offer support, but allowing Catherine to lead this conversation as she had requested. He watched their children's faces, memorizing this moment of innocence before everything would change forever. George, at 9, was old enough to understand serious conversations. Charlotte, 7, was intuitive and observant. Louis, at 5, would need the most careful explanation. Catherine began by reminding them how much she loved them, how proud she was of each of them, and how nothing could ever change those feelings. She spoke about how sometimes people get sick in ways that doctors cannot fix, using simple words that wouldn't frighten them, but would prepare them for what was coming. She explained that she was one of those people, and while she felt fine most days, she would gradually become more tired and would need more rest. George's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. His young face crumpled as he processed what his mother was telling him. At 9, he understood enough about death to realize what cannot fix meant. Charlotte reached for Catherine's hand, her eyes filling with tears but trying to be brave. Louis, still too young to fully comprehend, asked if Mummy would be better soon, the way he always got better when he had a cold. Catherine pulled all 3 children closer, holding them as they cried. She promised them that she would be there for as long as possible, that they would have many more happy days together, and that even when she couldn't be with them anymore, her love would never leave them. She told them about the letters she was writing, the special videos she was making, and how their father would always take care of them. William's composure finally broke as he watched his family process this devastating news. He had been strong for Catherine, strong for the staff, strong for everyone who had needed his leadership during this crisis. But watching his children's world shatter was more than he could bear. He joined the embrace, all 5 of them holding each other in the golden afternoon light, grieving together for the future they had planned, but would never have. The questions came slowly over the following days. George wanted to know if Catherine was in pain, if there was anything they could do to help if she was scared. Charlotte asked if she could sleep in her parents' room, afraid that her mother might disappear during the night. Louis continued to ask when Mummy would be all better, not quite able to accept that some kinds of sick don't go away. Catherine answered each question with patience and honesty, adjusting her explanations to match each child's level of understanding. She reassured them that she wasn't in significant pain, that the doctors were helping her stay comfortable, and that her greatest comfort came from spending time with them. She created new bedtime routines that included extra stories and longer cuddles, understanding that her children needed additional security during this frightening time. The family dynamics shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. George began helping more around the house without being asked, somehow understanding that his mother needed to conserve her energy. Charlotte became Catherine's shadow, wanting to be involved in every activity, as if her presence could somehow prevent the inevitable. Louis continued to be his cheerful, energetic self most of the time, though he became more clingy and needed extra reassurance about routine activities. Catherine made a conscious decision to maintain as much normalcy as possible. Lessons continued with Miss Thompson, though they became more flexible and often moved outside to take advantage of Catherine's good days. Family dinners remained sacred, with everyone sharing highlights from their day. Weekend activities continued, though they were adjusted to accommodate Catherine's energy levels. The staff at Anmer Hall rallied around the family with extraordinary dedication. Maria began preparing Catherine's favorite foods without being asked, understanding that appetite was becoming an issue. James, their groundskeeper, made sure the paths through the garden were always clear and safe for Catherine's walks. Even the security team, usually invisible in their professionalism, found small ways to show their support and affection for the family they protected. Catherine began creating what she privately called memory projects with each child. With George, she started a scrapbook of family photos, asking him to help choose the pictures and write captions. With Charlotte, she planned a special garden where they would plant flowers that would bloom each spring in her memory. With Louis, she recorded herself reading his favorite stories, ensuring that her voice would always be available for bedtime, even when she could no longer be there in person. These activities became healing rituals for the entire family, ways of processing grief while creating something beautiful and lasting. Catherine found strength in these projects, feeling that she was building bridges between her present love and her children's future needs. William documented these activities carefully, understanding that someday his children would want to remember not just that these conversations happened, but how their mother's love had guided them through the most difficult period of their young lives. November brought the first real changes in Catherine's condition that even the children could not miss. The vibrant woman who had run through the gardens with them just weeks before now moved more slowly, rested more frequently, and sometimes had to sit down suddenly during activities that had never tired her before. The family adapted with the resilience that Catherine had always admired in them. But the new reality was becoming impossible to ignore. Catherine's sister Pippa made discreet visits during this time, arriving quietly and staying for several days at a stretch. The two sisters had always been close, but now their relationship deepened in ways that only shared grief could create. Pippa helped with the children when Catherine needed to rest, organized family activities that wouldn't overtax her sister's energy, and provided the kind of emotional support that only a sister could offer. William's father, King Charles, and stepmother Camilla also came to Norfolk, though their visits were carefully planned around Catherine's good days. The king, who had always been fond of his daughter-in-law, struggled visibly with the situation. He spent long hours walking the grounds with William, offering support while also beginning the delicate process of preparing for changes in royal duties and public appearances. The hardest part for Catherine was watching her illness affect the people she loved most. She saw how William tried to hide his exhaustion from managing both her care and the children's needs. She noticed how George had become unnaturally quiet and responsible, taking on burdens that no 9-year-old should carry. She watched Charlotte hover nearby during every activity, afraid to let her mother out of sight for too long. Dr. Mitchell's visits became more frequent as Catherine's condition progressed. The doctor had developed a genuine fondness for the family and was impressed by how they were handling such an impossible situation. She helped adjust Catherine's medication to manage symptoms while maintaining her ability to participate in family life for as long as possible. These medical consultations took place in Catherine's bedroom, away from the children, but their increased frequency did not go unnoticed. Catherine made the difficult decision to complete her video messages during this time, while she still had the energy and clarity to say everything she wanted to share with her children. She recorded separate messages for each child's future 18th birthday, wedding day, and the birth of their first children. She spoke about her hopes for their futures, shared family stories they might not remember, and offered advice about love, work, and staying true to themselves. The recording process was emotionally exhausting but also cathartic. Catherine found herself laughing through tears as she remembered funny stories about each child's early years. She offered comfort for heartbreaks they hadn't yet experienced and celebrated achievements they had yet to accomplish. These videos became her most precious gift to her children, ensuring that her voice and wisdom would be present for all the milestones she would miss. William began taking over more of Catherine's traditional responsibilities with seamless dedication. He learned to French braid Charlotte's hair for school, mastered the specific way Louis liked his sandwiches cut, and became expert at helping George with his mathematics homework. These small acts of service became his way of honoring Catherine's devotion to their family while preparing for his future role as a single parent. The couple also began having what they privately called practical conversations about the future. Catherine shared her wishes for the children's education, their involvement in royal duties as they grew older, and the values she hoped would guide their upbringing. She talked about holiday traditions she wanted maintained, friends she hoped would remain part of their lives, and charities that had been meaningful to her that she hoped would continue to benefit from royal patronage. These discussions were heartbreaking but necessary. Catherine wanted to ensure that her influence would continue to shape her children's lives even after she was gone. She wrote detailed notes about each child's personality, their fears and dreams, their unique needs and talents. This information would be invaluable to William as he navigated single parenthood and helped their children grow into the adults she would never meet. The November weather matched the family's emotional state, gray, cold, and unpredictable, but Catherine insisted on maintaining some outdoor activities, bundling up in warm coats for short walks around the estate. She wanted her children to remember her as active and engaged, not confined to bed or limited by her illness. These walks became precious opportunities for individual conversations with each child, moments when she could offer encouragement and reassurance away from the worried eyes of the rest of the family. Catherine also began giving away some of her most treasured possessions, though she presented these gifts as early Christmas presents rather than final bequests. She gave Charlotte her grandmother's pearl earrings, explaining their family history and expressing confidence that Charlotte would wear them with dignity when she was older. She gave George her father's pocket watch, sharing stories about his grandfather's military service and the importance of honor and duty. The family's evening routines evolved to accommodate Catherine's changing needs. Instead of reading in the library, they often gathered in the master bedroom where Catherine could rest comfortably while still participating in family activities. These evening sessions became some of their most precious times together, filled with gentle conversation, shared memories, and the kind of peaceful intimacy that only comes when a family faces crisis together. December arrived with an unusual warmth that seemed like a final gift from nature to the family at Anmer Hall. Catherine had always loved Christmas, and despite her declining health, she was determined to create one last magical holiday season for her children. The house was decorated with the same care and attention to detail that had marked every Christmas of their marriage, though this year William and the staff quietly took on most of the physical work. Catherine supervised the decorating from her favorite armchair in the sitting room, directing the placement of ornaments that held special memories. The angel that topped their tree was one Charlotte had made in school the previous year. The handprint ornaments from when George was a toddler still held places of honor on the lower branches where Louis could see them easily. Each decoration told a story of their family's journey together, and Catherine wanted to share these stories with her children one more time. The children threw themselves into Christmas preparations with the intensity that comes from knowing this celebration was precious beyond measure. George helped William string lights around the exterior of the house, working carefully to match the pattern that Catherine had always preferred. Charlotte spent hours in the kitchen with Maria, learning to make the gingerbread cookies that had become a family tradition. Louis dictated long, elaborate letters to Father Christmas, though his requests had shifted from toys to impossible wishes like making Mummy better. Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, came to stay for the holidays, bringing with them the kind of comfortable family warmth that had always characterized Catherine's upbringing. Carol, in particular, provided steady support, helping with household routines while respecting the special dynamic that had developed between Catherine and her immediate family during these difficult months. The gift exchanges that year carried extra weight. Catherine had spent weeks selecting and preparing presents that would become treasured memories. For William, she had commissioned a custom photo album that chronicled their entire relationship, from their university days through their wedding and the birth of each child. The final pages were left blank, with a note suggesting that he continue the story with new memories and eventual happiness. For George, she had arranged for a private tour of the Royal Air Force Base where William had served, complete with the opportunity to sit in a helicopter cockpit. The experience was scheduled for the new year, giving George something special to anticipate. For Charlotte, she had commissioned a custom dollhouse that was an exact replica of Anmer Hall, complete with tiny furniture and miniature gardens. For Louis, she had created a treasure chest filled with small toys and treats, to be opened one item at a time throughout the coming year. The Christmas morning routine proceeded with careful attention to tradition. The children woke early and rushed to their parents' bedroom, as they had every year since George was born. Catherine, propped up with pillows and wrapped in her favorite cashmere robe, watched with delight as her children discovered their presents. William captured every moment on camera, understanding that these would be among the last Christmas photos of their complete family. The Christmas dinner was a masterpiece of coordination between the family and staff. Catherine insisted on participating in the preparation, though her contributions were limited to directing seasoning and sharing family recipes with Maria. The dining room was set with their finest china, and the conversation flowed with the easy warmth that had always characterized their family gatherings. Between Christmas and New Year's, Catherine experienced what Dr. Mitchell privately described as a last surge of energy. These temporary improvements sometimes occurred with her condition, offering families a final opportunity to create memories and say important things. Catherine used this time to have individual conversations with each family member, ensuring that everyone understood how much they meant to her. Her conversation with William was the most difficult. They sat together in their bedroom on New Year's Eve, holding hands and speaking softly about their fears, their gratitude, and their love. Catherine gave him the letter she had written months earlier, asking him to read it only after she was gone. She made him promise to find happiness again someday, to give their children the gift of seeing their father live fully, rather than merely survive. William struggled to make such a promise, but Catherine's gentle insistence finally convinced him. She reminded him that their love story had been complete and beautiful, and that honoring that love meant continuing to live with purpose and joy. She wanted their children to understand that love creates more love, not less, and that opening his heart again would be a tribute to what they had shared rather than a betrayal of it. The conversations with her children were individually tailored to their personalities and needs. With George, she spoke about leadership and responsibility, reminding him that being the eldest son came with privileges and obligations. She encouraged him to protect his siblings while still allowing himself to be a child for as long as possible. With Charlotte, she talked about strength and kindness, explaining how being gentle didn't mean being weak, and how true power came from lifting others up. With Louis, she kept the conversation simple and concrete, focusing on how much she loved him and how proud she was of his big heart and curious mind. She made him promise to always ask questions when he didn't understand something, and to remember that being confused or scared was normal and okay. She gave him a special stuffed animal that smelled like her perfume, something that would provide comfort during difficult nights ahead. As New Year's Day dawned, Catherine felt a deep sense of completion. She had said everything that needed to be said, given all the love she had to give, and created a foundation of memories that would sustain her family long after she was gone. The house was filled with the quiet contentment that comes after a holiday well celebrated, and Catherine allowed herself to rest in the knowledge that she had given her children one last perfect Christmas to remember. The first week of January brought the quiet calm that follows the holiday season, but also the unmistakable reality that Catherine's time was drawing to a close. Her energy levels dropped significantly after the Christmas surge, and she spent most of her days resting in the master bedroom, surrounded by flowers from the Anmer Hall greenhouse and photographs of her children's smiling faces. Dr. Mitchell made daily visits now, adjusting Catherine's medication to keep her comfortable, while allowing her to remain alert and present with her family. The doctor had developed such genuine affection for the family that these professional visits had become deeply personal. She often stayed longer than medically necessary, simply sitting with Catherine and offering the companionship of someone who understood what was happening. William barely left Catherine's side during these final days. He had arranged for additional help with the children's care and education, ensuring that he could focus entirely on his wife's comfort and their remaining time together. The children visited their mother's room frequently throughout each day, bringing drawings they had made, books they wanted to share, or simply curling up beside her for quiet conversations. The household staff moved through their duties with hushed efficiency, understanding that they were witnessing the end of an era. Maria prepared simple, easily digestible meals that Catherine might be able to enjoy. James ensured that fresh flowers were always available from the greenhouse. The security team maintained their vigilant protection while respecting the family's need for privacy and peace. Catherine's parents remained at Anmer Hall during this time, providing support to William and creating additional warm adult presence for the children. Carol, in particular, stepped seamlessly into helping with bedtime routines and meal preparation, allowing William to spend maximum time with Catherine, while ensuring that the children's needs continued to be met with love and attention. On a particularly clear morning in mid-January, Catherine asked William to help her to the window seat in their bedroom, where she could look out over the gardens she had loved so dearly. The winter landscape was stark but beautiful, with bare trees creating intricate patterns against the pale sky. They sat together quietly, her head resting on his shoulder, both understanding without words that this was likely their final morning together. Catherine spoke softly about her lack of regrets, about the extraordinary life they had built together, and about her confidence in William's ability to raise their children with love and wisdom. She reminded him of the video messages and letters she had prepared, reassuring him that while her physical presence would be gone, her guidance and love would continue to be available to their family for years to come. The children seemed to sense that this day was different. They were gentler than usual, speaking in whispers and choosing quiet activities that could be done near their mother's room. Charlotte brought her latest artwork to show Catherine, a drawing of their family surrounded by hearts and flowers. George read aloud from one of the adventure books they had been enjoying together. Louis simply sat close to his mother, content to hold her hand and occasionally share observations about the birds outside the window. As evening approached, Catherine gathered her family around her bed for what she knew would be their final bedtime routine together. She listened as each child shared their favorite part of the day, a tradition they had maintained even during the most difficult weeks. She offered gentle words of encouragement and love, telling each child how proud she was of their courage and kindness during such a difficult time. The goodnight kisses that evening lasted longer than usual, with Catherine holding each child close and whispering special words meant just for them. She reminded George to take care of his siblings, encouraged Charlotte to never stop being curious about the world, and told Louis that he would always be her baby, no matter how big he grew. After the children were settled in their rooms, William returned to Catherine's bedside. They spent the evening looking through photo albums and sharing favorite memories from their years together. Catherine dozed intermittently, but woke frequently to squeeze William's hand or share another thought about their life together. They spoke about their first dance at their wedding, about the moment they first held each of their children, about quiet Sunday mornings when the whole family would pile into their bed. As the night deepened, Catherine's breathing became more labored, but she remained peaceful and comfortable. William held her close, whispering words of love and gratitude for the extraordinary woman who had shared his life and given him 3 beautiful children. He promised to honor her memory by living fully and raising their children with the same values and love she had always shown them. In the early hours of the morning, as dawn was just beginning to touch the Norfolk sky, Catherine passed away peacefully in William's arms. Her final words were expressions of love for him and their children, and her last breath came as naturally as falling asleep. The woman who had captured the heart of a future king, who had modernized the monarchy with her grace and authenticity, and who had loved her family with every fiber of her being, found her final peace surrounded by the warmth and devotion that had defined her entire adult life. The quiet farewell that Catherine had wanted was complete. In the privacy of their beloved Anmer Hall, away from cameras and public scrutiny, a love story that had captivated the world came to its end with the same dignity and grace that had characterized its entire journey. William, now alone but surrounded by the legacy of love that he and Catherine had created together, began the difficult but sacred work of helping their children understand that while their mother's physical presence was gone, her love would remain with them forever.